I had always believed my family was perfect. My parents, Mr. and Mrs. Adams, were the ideal couple, or so I thought. My mother, Evelyn, was a devout Christian woman, a strong pillar in the church, while my father, a successful businessman, did everything to provide for us. Our family pastor, Pastor Elijah, was like an uncle to me, respected, trusted, and always around. But life has a cruel way of revealing the truth in the most devastating way possible. I started noticing small changes. My mother's behavior became different, more secretive, more cautious. She started spending more time at church even when there were no official activities. Late night calls, whispers in the kitchen, the way she suddenly became defensive when I asked about Pastor Elijah, it all felt off. Something in my gut told me that something was terribly wrong. One evening, I returned home earlier than expected from school. As I walked in, I heard hushed voices coming from my parents' room. My heart pounded. I tiptoed closer and heard something that sent chills down my spine, my mother moaning, calling out Pastor Elijah's name. I felt my world crumble in that instant. My legs trembled as I pushed open the door slightly, just enough to see the unthinkable, my mother wrapped in the arms of our family pastor. The sight before me felt unreal. The man who had preached about holiness, about family values, was the same man defiling my mother, my home, my faith. I felt anger surge through my veins, but I couldn't even move. I stood there, frozen in disbelief, my breath shallow. A tear rolled down my cheek as my mother gasped, realizing I had caught them. I ran out of the house, tears streaming down my face. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mother tried calling me, but I ignored her. The next morning, she sat me down, trying to explain. It's not what you think, she lied, but the evidence was undeniable. Pastor Elijah avoided eye contact when I saw him in church. I saw the shame in my mother's eyes, but was it really shame, or was she afraid of being exposed? I couldn't keep it to myself. My father had a right to know. One evening, with a trembling voice, I told him everything. His face went pale, his hands trembled, and his eyes welled up with tears. I had never seen him cry before. The pain in his voice as he muttered, "Why, Evelyn? Why?" broke me even further. He stormed out, leaving my mother in tears, pleading for forgiveness. Word got out. The church community was in shock. Pastor Elijah was asked to step down, but the damage was done. My mother became the subject of gossip. The whispers followed her wherever she went. Some people blamed her, others blamed Pastor Elijah. My father couldn't stand the humiliation. He moved out, leaving my mother alone with her shame. Our family was shattered. My father filed for divorce. My mother tried to mend things, but it was too late. I couldn't look at her the same way again. The woman I once adored had become a stranger to me. Pastor Elijah left the city, his reputation in ruins. Time passed, but the wounds remained fresh. I learned that love could be deceitful, that trust could be broken in the most unexpected ways. My heart carried the scars of my mother's betrayal, and though I tried to move on, I would never forget the day my world fell apart. I eventually left home for college, determined to build a life far from the shadows of my past. But the pain followed me. I struggled with trust, with relationships, with my faith. I often found myself staring at the ceiling at night, remembering my father's broken face, my mother's guilty eyes, the whispers in the church, and the bitter taste of betrayal. Years later, while walking through a different city, I saw a familiar face. Pastor Elijah. He looked worn out, aged beyond his years. I felt a rush of anger but also curiosity. What had happened to him? He was standing outside a small church, addressing a group of people. I listened from a distance as he spoke about redemption, about the weight of past sins. A part of me wanted to scream at him, to remind him of what he had done, but another part of me wondered, had he changed? I didn't confront him. Instead, I walked away, realizing I didn't need his apologies to heal. I had held on to the pain for too long. It was time to let go. I found peace in forgiveness, not for them, but for myself. The past would always be there, but I refused to let it define me. The years that followed were tough. I worked hard to establish myself, to escape the trauma that had defined my youth. I built relationships cautiously, always wary of betrayal. Therapy helped, but the scars were deep. I reconnected with my father, who had remarried and found happiness. My mother lived a reclusive life, burdened by regret. One day, I received a letter from my mother. She wanted to see me, to talk. I hesitated, torn between old wounds and the possibility of closure. When I finally met her, I saw a broken woman, aged by sorrow. "I am sorry," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. And for the first time in years, I truly listened. I eventually built a new life, away from the past that had haunted me for so long. My father remarried, my mother lived in solitude, and Pastor Elijah faded into the background of my memories. Some wounds never fully heal, but with time, they become a part of your story, a painful chapter, but not the ending. The scars of that day will forever remain, reminding me that trust, once broken, is never the same again. But life goes on, and so do I.